Hello, everyone. Hi, and we are live again. It's been such a long time. Uh, my last broadcast, I think, was about 8 or 9 months ago. I think it was in June. So this is the first time since a long time ago, and I'm a little bit out of practice, so I have been, I just took a break from public teaching for about 8 or 9 months, and I was basically just resting and not doing much, and I was taking my walks, just sort of living. I did, however, I was, however, active from time to time on our Discord community. So we have an online chat Discord community, which everybody, by the way, is welcome to join. There are quite a lot of wonderful people there, including some people that I would personally consider to be somewhat advanced in a spiritual path. They do give wonderful advice, and in my experience, it can be very beneficial and productive to speak to other people in the spiritual path when you're also on it. So welcome everybody to join. And I did some video meetings and phone meetings from time to time, but generally I've been absent from teaching, and now I'm kind of slowly coming back. So I'm going to host these meetings as usual every week on Sundays in the morning Pacific time. So I will answer your questions. I will take any other questions from the comments in YouTube. You can post comments on YouTube. You can also post comments on Facebook. I will see all of these comments, and I will be able to answer all of your questions, or any of your questions. You can also come and speak to me live during these meetings. If you follow the StreamYard link, it should be somewhere down below in the meeting description on both YouTube and Facebook. So if you click the StreamYard link, then you will end up in the StreamYard's guest room, and I will add you to the meeting. So I don't have any specific topic to discuss today. I will just take your questions from live audience, including, as well as comments. And if we run out of those, I'll read some of the questions from my channel that I haven't yet addressed. So just like that, we have one person waiting. Let me add him. Anton, hi, how are you? Can you hear me? Anton? Anton? Can you hear me? No, I don't think that he can. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Well, Anton? Okay. I can see him blinking, but I can't hear anything. Anton? No, I don't know. Anyway, so we only have one visitor who doesn't say much. Well, maybe he just wants to look and be quiet, which is totally fine. So I don't have any comments right now, so I'll just take a look at some of the questions from my... oh, wait a second. So somebody says that the StreamYard link redirects to... Oh, no, okay. No, it's good. Okay. So I will then take a look at some of the questions that I might have left unanswered from my chat community. So let me take a look. Okay. Yeah, I think I have some that I can try and address this time. So I apologize. I thought there would be more live audience with live questions. Hold on, if you give me just a second. Okay. Okay, yes, I'll just read the questions from... Oh, Flora. Hi, Flora. Hello. So if you want to ask anything, you can just type it in the comments, or join us via StreamYard. So in the meantime, I will try to address so one person asks, I have a question about processing fears. My usual way of processing fear is to either find the reason behind the fear and process that, or sit with the fear and accept it. Recently, there has been another way that fear is showing up, and I don't know how to work with it. My body is experiencing the reaction to fear, but the fear itself is hiding. I'll try to explain it more. My body is experiencing stomach upset, kidney, and food pain. It's common for me under high stress and nightmares. I know my body well. These are all signs of me feeling something fearful, but this time I can't place the source of the fear or the fear itself, only my body's response to it. I don't feel afraid, so there is nothing to sit with and accept. I can't find a source of the fear for the fear or reaction, so I can't process the source of it either, but it's clearly here. I wake from nightmares and I can't find a reason why I would be having them. My life seems to be pretty good actually, but there's clearly something that is triggering my body to react this way. Each night the nightmares get stronger, along with the body pain. So I know it is something I need to process before it grows. Any help or advice would be very appreciated. Okay, so I can make a couple of comments. Thank you very much for your open and honest message. So I can make a couple of comments. So first of all, I know it is something I need to process before it grows. No. That it doesn't work this way. It's not that if you process something, then you're moving into the right direction, and otherwise it will grow and it will be really, really bad. No. So if it grows, then that's exactly how it's supposed to be. You see, if it grows, that it is exactly your fear coming up to the surface. So don't try to control this process. Don't try to think, oh well, I have to find a way to work with it. I have to find a method to work with it. Otherwise, I'm screwed. No, I mean, you're screwed anyways. So don't worry about it. All you have to do is just process the sensations, right? And if there's some bodily sensations that are associated with fear in your case, but you can't find the fear itself, then just focus on accepting those, right? So if you know that there's nothing to worry about otherwise I would just advise you to go to the doctor. If you know that those are just manifestations of your fear, then that's exactly how it manifests. So then that's exactly what you place your focus and attention on. So if you get some bodily expressions, which could actually even manifest as physical pain, and that's totally fine, by the way, when it happens. So just place the focus on your attention on the point of pain. Lie down and be with this pain, or just go about your day normally. If you can't find the reason for the fear, don't try to. You see, you don't have to always find reason for what you're feeling. Actually, that's what the mind tries to do all the time, and most of these reasons are bullshit, one way or the other. Osho once said, never ask yourself why. and I never give this advice because it's not possible, right? So the mind will ask why anyway, and you will hear it, this endless explanations. But if you had this misconception that activity of the mind is what actually allows you to progress on the spiritual path, then I'm here to dissuade you from it. No, that's not what allowed you to progress. Not the endless mind's rumination about why you're feeling a certain way is what allowed you to progress on the spiritual path to end up where you are. No, it is your acceptance and willingness to feel the things that were uncomfortable to you before. Your willingness to feel the things that you didn't want to feel before. That's what allowed you to progress on the spiritual path. And during this process, the mind creates questions, the mind answers them, the mind creates stories. So why am I feeling this way? Or that's why, or now I know, I am relieved. It actually all doesn't matter. So it will happen. And that's actually great, because that's also how you get insight. And that's also how you can verbalize your experience later. And also how you get the ability to help somebody later if you wish. But that's not the focus. That's not the point. The point is just to feel the things that you didn't want to feel before. So the same principle applies to your message, to your question. So I hope that it helps you in some way and it brings you some clarity. If not, feel free to follow up with me on the forum. So So let me see. I'm a little bit out of practice, so I might be okay. Okay. Halili says, "Thank you for your teachings. They're very precise and direct." Thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback. So you're welcome. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them or join this meeting via Discord link. Now, let me take a look at some other questions which I might have on my channel. Hold on. Sorry, on my forum. Anata I'm not gonna read the name. One person asks, you said that you're generally very peaceful with life and don't even like to kill spiders, Artem. Yeah, I don't really like to kill anything if I don't have to. So when I find spiders, I generally want to, get them out of the house. Do you feel the same way about flies? That's a good question. Yes, I mean generally yes. I wouldn't just kill a fly. Why? Why would I? It's life. It's life just like you are. And hopefully, I live in California, so we don't have actually problems with flies here. So I have, I have nets installed on my windows, so I don't have. I actually haven't even seen flies in California, but there are mosquitoes, so they don't get in because of the net. I can certainly kill a mosquito that is sucking my blood. There's no problem about it. But where I grew up, actually, I mean, I didn't really grow up there, but I used to come to a Russian village as a boy and spend summers there. There was a lot of flies, and there was like this, fly flapper. I don't know, like how you call it, this thing with a stick that you kind of kill flies with. And they used to do this all the time because their house was filled with flies. And of course, they get into food, and they can actually bite, especially when you're sleeping. It can be quite painful. So rarely, though, it happens, but they can be a nuisance. And would I have anything against this? No, not really. I mean, if something is a serious nuisance to you, then I mean, you do what all life does. I mean, animals don't have a lot of problems with killing flies if they need to, but. The problem is that we kill in the dream state. We kill life so habitually, so without any reason, for such petty and silly reasons, that when this goes away, you are quite surprised about how gentle and caring you become with other life. So it is also the recognition of your own fragility and your own impermanence that rids you of this insane cruelty and callousness with regards to other life, because all other life is also fragile and impermanent, and all life is sacred. So unless you have a good reason that threatens your own survival or health, then it doesn't even occur to you to harm or kill other beings. So I really hope that it answers this question. So let's see. So we don't have any more questions from the live audience, so I'll continue just reading. Teresa asks, how about flowers? Actually, the same thing. I really dislike the idea of cutting flowers. For that feels quite barbaric to me, right? So again, I can also quote Osho, who said wonderfully about it, and I remember how I read it, and I had this deep appreciation for this wisdom. He said, if you like a flower, you will cut it because you will want to make it your own. But if you love a flower, you will water it. You see? So what we like, we want to possess. What we like, we want to make our own. And in that, we kill it. It's the same thing not only with flower, but it's even the same thing with our children. We want to possess them, so we kill their spirit. We want to tell them how they should be. So we destroy them. But if you love something or somebody, then you will care for it. You see, it's very different. Possess versus care. Take versus give. So I buy flowers in the supermarket because they already cut. And sometimes I would never buy those for myself, but for other people that like them, they already cut. But I would not myself cut flowers. That's just silly. If I like flowers, then I will plant them in my yard. I mean, even if I lived in an apartment, I would plant them in a pot. I would not cut flowers. I don't like that at all. So then the question goes, what about bacteria, yeast, and other food? Well, I mean, we're all sort of, our bodies have so many bacteria. Like, it's really even hard to say when one life begins and one life ends. So don't worry about things like bacteria, yeast, and things like that. All life constantly consumes each other. Life is constant eating each other, right? So in the whole kingdom of life, the only things that actually don't eat each other are plants. So they get energy directly from the sun via photosynthesis. Everything else kills and eats each other. That's fine. It's part of the circle of life. It is part of the whole thing. It is part of the whole game. So it's completely fine. It's just that the irrational behaviors that were only viewed as rational in the insanity of the dream state go away, right? And actually cutting flowers just so that you have something pretty on your table for some time is quite irrational behavior, Well, especially if you can just go out and look at them, So there's really nothing rational about it. It's only feels okay in our forgetfulness of how needlessly cruel it is. I mean, for what? Right? So I don't feel better when I look at a beautiful flower. I always feel great, right? But even if I did, and I mean, it's nice, of course. But even if it was needed for me to feel better, it's not. I would still go out and look at them live. I mean, why do I have to have them in my home, right? So the dream state is actually quite irrational. So it's not about like becoming some sort of a saint or about creating rules for yourself, so how you can behave to become saintly. No, it's about processing your own pain so that the stupidity of our rational behaviors and how they're all geared mostly towards protecting ourselves from our pain, mostly towards isolating ourselves, mostly towards rejecting the truth and opening up because it's difficult, because it's scary. Only that kind of goes away. So that those behaviors are seen for what they are, which is all maladaptive behaviors, psychological defense mechanisms, and or either avoiding pain or yearning, clinging to some beautiful experience in an illusion that it would allow you to avoid pain. So that's what it's about. It's not becoming a saint. It's not about becoming a saint. Okay, so Logan says, "Hey Artem, I feel like I'm falling into non-duality slowly." Wonderful, great for you. Only for people, often for people, it's a sudden shift, as with you from what I read. Yes, that's true. So for me, it was very sudden. For Eckhart, I think is the right pronunciation of his name, was also very sudden. But let's say, I think Forshut was also very sudden. But let's say Adya says that most people fluctuate quite a lot. And that has also been my observation with all of the students and everybody. And I think Adya did also. So it doesn't matter how it happens. How do I make this jump? Yes. So don't. How did you make your shift? I don't know. Yeah. Don't try to make this jump. You see, that's the thing. Is that so? If you're shifting into it suddenly, it means that it kind of fluctuates. So at some time you feel more aligned with it, so to say, or kind of I don't know what would be the right way to describe it for you. And then at some points you feel less, right? So the how do I make this shift is exactly what prevents you from making this shift. Because what happens is that you begin to miss it. And that is also a sign of being discontent with the current experience. So how do I make this shift? Is being discontent with your current experience. And that is exactly what prevents you from realizing that the current experience is the only thing that you have. And there is you can't be discontent with it, right? So it's always illusory. How can you be discontent with the only thing that exists? So this discontent actually is part of your experience, and this discontent is what you should focus on, right? So try to identify the feeling that is whatever sensation that is lacking, sort of like whatever. What is it right now? What is it that's going on right now that makes you say, how do I bring non-duality back? You see, because if you were completely happy and content, it wouldn't even occur to you how to bring non-duality back. You see, it doesn't make any sense. Like, for somebody who's always happy and content, they don't think about these things. You see, so what is it right now that is crying for your attention? You know, what is it right now that you are displeased with, right? And the best way is go directly into whatever the sensation in the body or the emotion or something, right? And just place your attention there. If we're talking about meditation, just place your attention there and just stay with it. Explore it in a sort of a curious way, not with the idea, not with the desire for it to go away, but with another idea. Well, I'm curious about myself. What is it that I'm feeling? Where is this restlessness? Let me take a look at it. Let me explore this, from all of the sides. If that's some emotion, then let me really see how it feels. You see. So the spiritual movement that ultimately brings you to non-duality is a movement towards the current experience, towards whatever's going on right now. It's not a movement towards some nirvana or non-duality or some other things. This thing happened. So, but if you focus on them, then you will never reach them, right? But if you focus on yourself, right? That's also, by the way, what Osho used to say, meant when he said, again, beautifully, he said, don't try to reach the divine. If you try to reach the divine, if you focus on the divine, you will never reach it. Focus on yourself. Because if you focus on yourself, you will invariably reach the divine, because there's nowhere left to go. You see? So the focus should always be on yourself. The non-duality, divine, God, loves, the present moment, however you may call it, it just happens. But you have to focus on yourself, on the present moment, not on some non-duality, which is maybe a memory at this point, or some idea that you yearn for. So if you notice that you're yearning for something, focus on that yearning. How does it feel like to yearn for non-duality? Let's explore that. You see, so always look at your present experience. Okay, so I hope this helps. So I don't have any more questions right now. That was from the live audience. We have 20 people watching us. Woohoo! Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for your support. It's great to see that that it is helpful for other people. That's wonderful. So let me look at some more questions. So Alex says, hey, Artem, I have someone that's interested in reading your content in Quora. I know you said it has been updated in a while. So would there be another source with your writings that you think could be more helpful current? Yes, that's right. So it hasn't been updated in a while. On my website, truefreedom.net, like maybe about 60 or 70% of my Quora questions are indexed and categorized. The rest are in Quora feed. But the good news is that the Quora feed can be sorted by time. So everything that isn't on the website yet is at the top of the Quora feed. So you can read all of my latest content. Quora is probably, yes, Quora is the most complete. So if you want to look at all of my content, then just go through Quora. It's always there. So I plan to add, to index and categorize this as well and update the website. So I plan to update the website within the next 2 or 3 months, and also add some, it still points to Slack. We don't use Slack anymore. We actually moved to Discord, but it still points to Slack. So I want to update that and maybe add some videos there. So I will let you guys know when that happens. But so far, if you're looking for the most complete archive of everything that I wrote, that would be Quora. Oh, by the way, also some of the members of my forum was so kind, and he created a Python script which pulled all of my Quora writings in a PDF file. So that's not a book. That's still kind of that looks like screenshots, but it's a single PDF file. So it has everything, including the latest writings, and I want to share this on my website also. So within the next couple of months, I hope that I will update it. Okay, let's see. The questions. Okay, so Venus Girl asks, Artem, just wondering if you think this time is harder for people to heal and get to openness / enlightenment / source / love because of the pandemic and not able to live like we used to. Like, is it too much going inwards without an outlet of work or any human connections at all? I mean, I get it that it's a solo journey, but do you think in our normal world, at least, there was respite from many D-knots? I'm not sure what it means. Oh, dark night of the soul, and different realizations. I don't know if I'm making sense here. Oh, I don't know. It's a complicated question. So, because the journey is so rich, it is so wide, it is so all-encompassing that it has moments where deep solitude is needed. But you absolutely cannot, in my opinion, to arrive at a fully enlightened state by becoming a hermit. So you can climb the mountain to the very top of it by becoming a hermit. But that's half of the journey. And then the rest of the journey is coming back from the mountain to people. And you can't do this while you're a hermit. Most people's problems, the problem of most people actually is not the second part of the journey, because the first part appears the most incredibly difficult. So we are in the separated state, we are deeply conditioned and deeply dependent on emotional ties with other people. So that's why in the spiritual literature, you will find so many references to solitude, to silence, to being alone. And for most people, it is completely true. It is their inability to be alone which prevents them from really discovering the truth of themselves. So the ability to be alone is also the ability to love. Again, Osho. And the ability to be alone, I will add for myself, is also the ability to love yourself. So from this perspective, pandemic brings a perfect opportunity to be alone. But the other perspective is also true. That's the paradox. Like, for example, Adi said once that connection is the only thing that heals. Only connection heals. He's absolutely right. Only connection heals. But you can look at it widely. You can say that a connection to yourself, a reconnecting to yourself, is ultimately what heals. And you may and you can only truly reconnect to yourself alone. But it's not. This quote is deeper than that. It's the connection to other people that is also healing, you see. And even if you're reconnected to yourself, the degree to which you're reconnected to yourself is the degree to which you're connected to other people. So if you're enlightened and you're still a hermit, I would say go out and test your enlightenment. Start speaking to people, start connecting to them, start relating to them. If you feel that like no one can relate to you and you cannot relate to anybody, you may be very deep in non-duality, but it's not enlightenment yet. Keep going. So to answer your question, it has benefits and drawbacks depending on where you are on the journey. But don't think too much of it. This seriously, for most people who are serious into spirituality. I mean, unfortunately, most people who claim to be serious in spirituality actually aren't. But for most people who are serious in spirituality, the situation where they have to spend more time with themselves is a blessing, usually, because for most people, just being isolated from other people brings up all sorts of fears, restlessness, all sorts of discomfort, you see. Of course, there are also opposite cases where a person feels great when he's alone, and then as soon as he starts speaking to other people, there are all sorts of triggers and all sorts of stuff, right? And then, of course, to this person, I would say, no, go out and start speaking to other people. It's good for you. You're too comfortable alone. So yes, it can be both, but I don't think it's a hindrance. Actually, you can look at it as a blessing. Of course, I leave the other side of it, which is the deaths and suffering that it brings, and the reason about why we've been having this pandemic. We're not supposed to be in such close proximity to. We're not supposed to eat bats. We're not supposed to get all these wild animals into cages and put them on into market and sell them. I mean, that's it's barbaric. So what we're doing is we bringing this on ourselves. So that's a different aspect. But if you look at this from just a sort of your personal point of view, then you can say that from a perspective of spiritual practice, it's a great opportunity, you see, to really stay with these feelings of loneliness, of disconnection. It's a great opportunity to explore this. Okay, so we have a question from Tony. Tony says, do you have any advice on how to get past this zombie phase? So yeah, I think I know what you mean. The past 2 years, I've become increasingly more dull and passive. I've lost interest in my relationships and spend most of my time doing nothing. I'm pretty much always in a meditative state, yes. Emotions are most often experienced as neutral physical sensations, yes. Still experience regular dreamy feelings in dreams, though. I suspect that I am subconsciously suppressed. I suspect that too. But how do I get across to my supposedly suppressed emotions if doing what? Okay, so Tony, I think that your message cut. So the last thing that I see is doing. So maybe you can post the second part of your message. But I think that I understand the gist of the question, and I get this question a lot. So I'll give you my standard answer. At some point of the journey, there's a point where meditation as a form of practice becomes rather inefficient. And unfortunately, at this point of the journey, there's usually still a lot of conditioning. So that's also why it is so rare, for somebody to really complete the circle, right? So, for example, for as long as far as I remember, Osho did twice the 3 years of silence. So the first time was immediately after his self-realization, and the second time he was already a quite known and accomplished teacher, but he said later that he just felt that something was incomplete. So he felt that something was incomplete, and he just went into silence for another 3 years. So, I mean, needless to say, at this point, the question of meditation wasn't even a question. I don't even think that it was really possible for him to meditate deliberately. So that's one point that I'd like to make. Unfortunately, also, people tend to claim that meditation isn't effective anymore before that happens. And the way that this trickery works is that ego says, well, I'm always meditating. Well, I'm asking, what happens to you when you meditate? And ego says, well, nothing, because I always meditate, nothing. What can happen to me? So ego speaking of consciousness, like, yeah, nothing happens to consciousness when you meditate. Nothing can happen to consciousness for sure, right? But my question was, what happens to you? Meaning that when you meditate, when you lie down to meditate, is there any experience, right? Is it just lying down as if just like resting, and you can just lie down for an hour and say, oh, that was a great rest? Or as you just lie down and close your eyes, you start having experiences, right? Maybe not immediately, but maybe in an hour, like in an hour and a half, maybe in 2 hours, there's some restlessness, there's maybe some there's some energetic movement in your body, what people call kundalini. Maybe there's some energy moving, there's some tingling, there's some jerking of your body, there's some emotion coming up, there's some fear. Maybe you feel like you're dissolving deep or whatever. And then you may get up from this meditation after 2 hours, and then you can become emotional, you can cry, or you can become emotional the next day, or the dreams might get more visual or emotional. So the question is, does meditation have any effect on your psyche, right? So not that does it have any effect on consciousness. Nothing has any effect on consciousness. So for as long as it does, it's a good practice. And then at some point, at least in my experience, meditation and kind of light, dreamy sleep, or even sleep without dreams at all. So you just there's awareness and no objects of awareness, just kind of a nothingness. So meditation and light sleep merge into one experience and become kind of indistinguishable. So that's one thing. So my first advice would be, if you feel like there's still some unconscious/subconscious suppression, just meditate for longer. Up to a moment where meditation doesn't feel like practice, doesn't arise anything, it doesn't create any changes in you during it or after it, so it just feels like rest. So that's one. Another point is another method is psychedelics. So psychedelics are basically just intense and forced meditation, especially the kind of classical psychedelics like LSD or magic mushrooms. And if you, even if like a meditation for an hour long meditation doesn't do anything to you, an hour long meditation in combination with a modest dose of LSD probably will. If you especially like if you feel yourself, if you intuit yourself that there's still more suppression in you. So what psychedelics tends to do is they tend to intensify meditation more deeply. So they tend to kind of forcefully take you through your suppression and your resistance, and bring up the unconscious material to the level of consciousness. And you can also start dreaming kind of on psychedelics. I mean, emotionally dreaming most of all. I don't care too much about the specific scenarios that happen, but what's important is that in the scenarios there's usually some emotional experience, and it gives you an opportunity to process, to do emotional release. So if you're interested in that, and kind of a longish meditation doesn't do anything for you, then I would advise meditation with the help of psychedelics. Start slowly. There's absolutely no reason, especially if you're in an always meditative state, there's absolutely no reason to do heroic doses. In fact, heroic doses might even be too painful for you, because there's still a lot of pain in front of you. So I would just suggest start slow. Take half a standard dose or something like that. I don't know, like maybe even less. Start slow, then you can increase the dose if you want to, and treat it as not as just as entertainment. And I really doubt that it will be entertaining. Most likely, it will be quite painful in the beginning, of course, right? So and then there's deepening and release. So treat it as serious spiritual work, as a serious spiritual tool, and use it in combination with meditation. I did it a lot with music, without music. So it really helped me process quite a lot of my suppressed pain. So, and then the third option is that I can recommend is to speak to other people on the spiritual path, right? So everybody who triggers you in some way. So you say that you look at emotions as neutral physical sensations, right? So kind of keeping experiencing this neutral physical sensations are your biggest spiritual practice, and they aren't entirely neutral, right? I won't believe you when you say they aren't entirely neutral. So if there are physical sensations, then there's probably some preference for good emotions over bad emotions. So people that trigger unpleasant emotion in you, they give you the biggest service. They are your biggest grace. And from that perspective, speaking to people who are further than you in the spiritual path, or just walking the spiritual path with you, can be even more productive than speaking to other people. Because what also tends to happen is that you kind of become difficult to trigger, but those who are deeper than you, they can still trigger you. You see, so it can be great practice to just speaking to people, and speaking very especially people who are also in non-duality, enlightened people, whatever, speaking to them honestly, developing intimacy and honesty with them, not avoid the conversations when you're being challenged. So and look, observe everything that arises in you, the reactions, emotions, anger, shame, fear, elevated heartbeat, whatever it is, especially during verbal conflict, and allow yourself to process those feelings. So that's another way to practice. So for somebody who's in this situation, I don't know any other advice than longer meditation, psychedelics, or intimate and truthful conversations with other people who can support it. So I hope that it helps you somewhat. If someone knows any other methods, please let me know. I don't know of any. And also, of course, you can also say that you don't have to do anything, right? It will all happen by itself. So that's another way to look at it, right? But if there's a yearning for you, to see deeper, to get to know yourself deeper, I have nothing. I think it would be silly, this yearning is something that you want to do now. It means, right? So it would be silly to reject yourself that. Because if you say, well, okay, now everything must happen by itself and I shouldn't practice, right? So that's another cage that you put yourself in, right? If you want to practice. Yeah, it is beautiful. So don't let anybody tell you if you should do something or shouldn't do something. Just listen to your heart, listen to your intuition. So Tony says, he follows up, he says, thank you so much for your answer. I experienced a severe psychosis last summer. Yes, so enlightenment oftentimes, the beginning of the realization feels like psychosis. I oftentimes say it's very often always the same for me. Followed by a long period of suicidal ideation. Yes, same here. So I don't know if drugs would be safe for me to do. What do you think? Well, I think that it means that there's still some suicidal ideation in you, my friend. I think that there's still some fear in you, and if you feel that drugs aren't safe, it probably means that you're afraid that the suicidal ideation will come back, that fear will come back. And you see, the thing about the suicidal ideation is that we aren't really afraid of the words. You see, like you can be in a specific state where you hear things like, oh, we should kill ourselves, but if you're not moved by them, you're like, whatever. It's like watching a TV a TV series, and somebody says, well, maybe I should kill myself. So you're just watching it. Okay, so what does it have to do with you? You see? So it's the same thing. It's not the words that are so scary about the suicidal ideation. It's the fear. Because what's happening is that you hear we should kill ourselves and you imagine that you'll do it and you become fearful. Or that you're in so much pain that this idea we should kill ourselves is coming up as a way to get out of the pain. It's actually it's a mistake, right? It's a trick. There is no way to get out of the pain. It's the most stupid thing that you could actually do. The emotional pain the body can handle. So it's always a mistake to try to get out of the emotional pain by doing something to your body. But that is how much we avoid it. So the problem with suicidal ideation isn't actually the words. It's how we feel when it happens, right? So being afraid of suicidal ideation is actually quite equivalent of being afraid of fear, of being afraid of pain, and being afraid of losing control, getting lost in fear and pain and doing something stupid. And the only way to move deeper and deeper through the possibility of suicidal ideation, through the fear, through the pain, is slowly allowing yourself to experience more and more of that. So if you're at a point where a long meditation, so if you're afraid of taking psychedelics, I completely understand you, right? I completely understand you. Don't do it then. So try to do just longer meditation and see if some of those fear, restlessness arise in you again. It's very possible. It's very possible. But if you're, so happy and content and kind of, done with most of your suffering, then, you wouldn't be too afraid of at least experimenting with it. So I'm not trying to push you. No, don't do it. Don't do it just because somebody told you to. If you feel like you don't want to do it, don't do it. Listen to yourself. But the only thing the thing that it tells me is that yes, there's still fear in you. There's still some anguish in you because you're afraid for it to return. If you're afraid for it to return, then it can. But just if it does during your meditation sessions, don't do anything about it. Just witness. Just witness the mind talking and pay attention. Not to just the words, not to the ideas that it gives you, but to how it feels. What is coming up in your consciousness along with these ideas, along with these conversations? There's almost always pain or fear or both, right? And that is the focus of the practice. So I hope that also helps you in some way. Okay, so that's great. So we have some activity. Thank you very much, guys. It was kind of awkward to just read my own questions. Okay, so no more questions from live audience. Nobody's in the waiting room, so let me get back to reading my own questions. But at least we have about 20 people watching us now, which is wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Sat says, hello, Artem. I was recently reading about some concepts in Sufism that in a way reminded me about your definition of enlightenment. In the Sufi tradition, one goes through different spiritual stages until one reaches fana, annihilation of the ego, and then one remains in baka, which is subsistence of the self devoid of egoical features. Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. Some Sufi masters even talk about fana or fana, annihilation of annihilation. Yes, so that's very similar to exactly. Yeah, in an attempt to express that one even forgets his awakening. Yes, exactly. So that's the same thing that I mean when I say that enlightenment is the last kind of that enlightenment needs to be transcended. So one needs to become completely ordinary again, forget about awakening, just live a completely ordinary life. The same thing that in Buddhism you may find like nirvana is the last delusion. So enlightenment is actually also a delusion. So first you find enlightenment, then you spend some time there, then you transcend enlightenment and you come back from the mountain again. So you continue. Does this concept have anything to do with what you're trying to communicate about enlightenment? Yes, it's pretty much the same thing. I'm sorry if I'm not concise enough. I don't write in English very often. I hope you're doing fine. Thanks. Yes, Seth. Thank you very much for your question. That's exactly it. If they put it this way about annihilation of annihilation and one forgets his awakening, yes, that's pretty deep. Osho used to say the same thing. So yes. So enlightenment is not yet the end. You kind of have to transcend your enlightenment and become a mortal human again. That's much deeper stage of realization. And Osho, by the way, spoke about it multiple times. It's just that it's very difficult to see for somebody who just begins this path. So yes, you got it right. Melly says, "Hey Artem, I have a question. Is obsession for power the same as obsessing to prove those who obsess for power wrong?" No, not necessarily. You can be obsessed with power for a variety of reasons. I mean, it's certainly like it looks like what you're talking about is some kind of some angle on the revenge. So if I so somebody had power and he wronged me, he slighted me, or whatever, they slighted me, and now I want to have power so that I will prove to them that they were wrong, right? That's kind of a revenge situation, right? So revenge is usually about proving the other person wrong, right? So what do people like? People who are obsessed with revenge, they want you to look them in the eye as they do it. They want you to know who did it and all of this, so that you realize how wrong you were. All of this kind of insane kind of thinking. But I think you're speaking about revenge. The obsession with power doesn't necessarily come from revenge, although it could. But it can also come from ideas that having power will make your life better, then having power is the same as having respect, and having respect is the same as having love. So it may come from yearning for love. It may come from delusional ideas that if you have power, you will control other people and have your life set up in such a way that you will never get hurt again. So there's all kinds of things. It doesn't necessarily stem exclusively from revenge, which I think is the core of your question. Is evil just that? No, evil is not just that. It's a part of evil. Evil comes from delusion, but it's only one particular aspect of delusion. Wanting to help someone out of their delusion in an impossible way that puts us into delusion as well, instead of actually helping in any way. In a way, yes. So ego, that's a kind of a pretty fundamental quality of the ego, because every ego thinks that it knows life better than other people. And every ego thinks that its way of life is the right way of life. It doesn't actually matter if your ego is deeply suffering or it's deeply happy and content and surrounded with praise and traditional success. But then every ego thinks that if other people were more like it, they would be better. The world would be better. You see, so every ego carries this fundamental dominance over other people. And it can be very easily seen if you look at the behavior of social justice warriors, for example, right? They can show such huge resentment, and they despise people. So they actually really think that if everybody was like them, the world would be a much better place. But everybody thinks that. You see, every ego thinks it. It's just that it's obvious in some behaviors, and that's why I bring it up. But it's just an example, right? Like, even if you look at some comical examples, like Hitler, do you think he didn't genuinely believe that the world would be a better place if he exterminated all the Jews and built whatever little deluded empire that he wanted to build? Of course he did, right? Mein Kampf, my struggle, his struggle for the world, such a saint. So kind of every ego thinks this way fundamentally, and especially those who struggle for the betterment of the world. If you're really working for the betterment of the world, you don't struggle. So he says, then maybe I'm answering my own question, but my mind is resting. But I'm not sure it's a real question, so I will take a quick. Yeah, I don't think that the rest of it is something that I can comment on. Then he says, what do you think is better than anarchism? Jesus. I mean, I don't really think anarchism in our current state of development of society is going to work. Uh, but but if you look at probably kind of much better definitions of anarchism that most people have, which probably are kind of close to the classical definitions of socialism, and emphasize freedom rather than anarchy, I mean, then it might. I'm not really ready for this conversation. I mean, I looked at socialism and capitalism in quite a big detail, but I haven't looked at anarchism. So if you want to discuss anarchism, then you'll have to like give me a primer on what it actually means, and I suspect it's not quite different from what authentic socialism means. Not like, you know, the USSR version of it, which is basically just a state capitalism where everything belongs to the state and the workers have no right whatsoever. That's not how socialist ideal actually even began. Okay, so he also asks, have you ever had any contact from beings with other planets? No, I haven't. Although in my dreams I probably have. So the interesting thing about the spiritual process is that so ego creates an imaginary world. And so during the unfolding of the dream, you kind of see and experience everything that you used to believe. That's the most interesting, mind-boggling fact. So if you never believed in aliens and UFOs and stuff like that, then you will never experience it. If you instead believed in God and Jesus, then you may actually speak to Jesus and talk to God and merge with God and speak to angels, and it will be as real for you as it is for other people who believe in UFOs and beings from other planets when they visit this other planet and speak to beings. So when people smoke DMT and they say, "Oh wow, I just spoke to other beings," so the same person, if he was born in the age of Jesus Christ, would certainly not experience that. He would experience whatever was the dominant beliefs of the culture that he was brought up in, right? That's why all the ancient folks that speak about enlightenment, they don't speak about UFOs and other beings and cosmic and galaxies and stuff like that. That's a very big part of our culture now. You see, it's everywhere. Science is a very big part of our culture now. And of course, it's so interesting. You know, are there other people? Are there other beings out there? Are we the only life in the universe? Of course, you know, everyone knows these questions. It's a big part of the culture. But back then, it wasn't, right? So that's why you don't get kind of revelations of this sort. But you get a lot of revelations of, I spoke to God and wrote down the commandments, like Muhammad or whatnot. Like I wrote down the rules to live and things like that. So it really depends on what you will see. Really depends on what you believe. That's kind of the most mind-boggling part, you see. So don't expect to see something that other people see, and don't put too much importance on what you see. You see, because even if it feels very real to you, those aliens that, let's say, you visited on meditation or in your psychedelic trips, well, guess what? Your night dreams also seem very real to you. I'm pretty sure that when in a night dream, that you forget that you're dreaming. So and it becomes your reality. So so the mind is amazing at how it can create a scenery for you, create an alternative reality for you, and create an identity that exists in this scenery, and it feels entirely real, right? But it's actually not. I mean, even the techniques to induce lucid dreaming usually have something to do with touching your body, and then you can realize and you can remember that, oh, okay, there's actually no bodily sensations here for some strange reason. So the mind actually is mostly the visual field, auditory and emotional. It's very difficult to experience something physical in a dream or in a psychedelic trip. So your conversations with the beings from the planet are actually your conversations with your unconscious, and it's fine. It's okay if that's the form it takes. Then it's fine. It's not like you choose what form it takes. So kind of don't discount those experiences, but don't think that they are real or realer than life, or it's important to have them, or necessarily compare your experiences with other people on the spiritual path. It's very individual. So Mekamo asks me, do you think the world would be a better place if everyone was more like you, Artem? Of course. Yes, of course I do. Yeah, well, as you know, as one master said one time, I have the biggest ego. Yeah, my ego is huge. So that's what you're asking. Then it's humongous. It's the size of this planet. So don't worry about it. I do. Yes, of course. Yes, I do. Okay, so anyone else? Anything else? Sari is asking me, do you have a daily routine? No. Although, I mean, I guess, let me put it this way. I don't try for a daily routine, so I don't have a set daily routine. But of course, as with everybody, my days tend to be similar to each other. So I can kind of look in retrospect and see what it is. What does it look like? She's asking. Is it just a fantasy of the mind to be wanting one, or just falls in place in the life states? Yeah, well, precisely. Yeah, it just falls in place. Yeah, it just falls in place. So you basically spend the days the way that you want to spend them. So I enjoy waking up rather early. It happens by itself. I enjoy taking walks. So I wake up. I drink my coffee. I still like coffee, but I drink decaf. And then I take a walk, and that's pretty much the end of the routine. I mean, the rest just unfolds on its own. The person that I would rather not pronounce the name of says, "You really suck at not reading." They're like, no, the other. Yeah, you're right. Actually, I thought that I would not read the names, and then realized that the names on my forum are kind of all nicknames. So people rarely use their real names there, and even if they do, it's just the first name. So there's actually no real privacy concerns in reading the names. So I kind of changed my mind. So you're right. Yes, you did catch me on that, and a good job. Okay. Ty says long walks are amazing. Yes, they are. Sometimes I walk like 3 times a day, and my walks are usually 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and I so sometimes I basically spend like an hour and a half on my feet, and then I was surprised, after this enlightenment thing, I eat what I want. I don't do any sports. I mean, why is my body so, kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say ripped, but not a lot of fat, kind of some muscle definition, kind of healthily well-looking body. And then realized, well, I eat very little, and compared to how most people eat, and I eat mostly vegetarian food, and I walk a lot, and I haven't even realized how much I was walking. And then I watched this, YouTube video about kind of the traditional approach to walking, and there's a lot of scientific evidence that walking is as good for your health as running. which makes total sense to me. I mean, because like imagine we are living in our natural state as kind of monkeys eating fruit. We don't run too much. Like this sort of idea that every animal runs a lot isn't actually true. I mean, most monkeys don't run too much, but they constantly move. So for us that's walking. So it makes total sense for me. And this YouTube video uh, enumerated like 10 positive things that happen to you when you walk, with some scientific evidence, and none of them was very surprising to me. So walking is wonderful. It's a wonderful exercise, and it's extremely pleasurable. So I love walking. Bo asks, do you still enjoy culture and stories like films, books, music, and art? Not as much as before. That's a good question. So I basically I enjoy adventure. So I can really so if it's a good movie, if it's well acted, if it looks more or less uh, real, good actors, good direction, and it's adventure, there are interesting twists, it's smart, it's not very predictable, then yes, I certainly enjoy it. What I don't enjoy as much is I don't enjoy as much drama, or like movies about romantic difficulties and things like that. So where the main point of the story, the main sort of artistic goal is to make the viewer really sympathize with the protagonist, and that's what makes a good drama, actually. So the best movies make you really care for the main character, and for other characters also too. So this really lost a lot of its appeal. So a lot of those movies become just super boring, because it's very difficult for me to relate to the. I mean, on the intellectual level, I can, but it's boring because there's no kind of emotional kind of sort of deep empathetic connection to the main character. So and I also can easily see that his behavior isn't rational, and he's suffering a lot. So that kind of became quite boring, usually. Not always, I think. Again, I mean, some movies are very enjoyable if they're well acted. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But generally, there was a tendency, away from dramas, and more towards either adventure or visual effects, or documentaries, something closer to real life. Less of a just of a story of a roller coaster, because I don't really experience much emotional response when I watch them. Most art is actually purely egoic in its core, because most art is very emotional. The art that I still enjoy as much as before is the art that is geared towards satisfying the senses rather than the psyche. So, for example, music without words. So I enjoyed it as much as before. Okay. Ty says, "Do you remember the name of the video?" No, but I think if you like search YouTube for like 10 benefits of walking, or something like that, I think it was quite recent. It was in the YouTube's recommended list. So usually fresh videos end up there on my Apple TV. So it was quite recent. I think you'll find it. Shay says, Artem, you mentioned before that at some point you encountered something within you that actively was conspiring to keep you in the egoic state. That something is ego. It's actively conspiring not to go away. Yes, I'm not sure that there's something else than the ego that is actively conspiring. Uh, uh, I saw a whole part of myself the other day that hides my happiness and is afraid to be seen, lest it die. Yeah, ego is afraid to be seen, and ego is afraid to be happy, because ego is always discontent. It always yearns for control. Uh, it's malicious, it's deceitful, and it hates to be seen by other people. I mean, most of all by you, but by other people too. And the kind of uncanniness that a lot of people experience when they speak to an enlightened person is this sensation of being seen. And it can be very uncomfortable. And usually, if you don't see yourself, if you haven't seen your own ego yet, you don't even know where it's coming from. But it can be really uncomfortable, and that's why there is oftentimes a lot of aggression, not necessarily physical, but verbal and emotional aggression towards deeply realized people, especially in the spiritual circles, in the not authentic spiritual circles, where they mostly about creating like good feels and being nice to each other. But they really hate to be seen, just like any ego is. So the spiritual progression, the spiritual process, is allowing yourself to see your ego, however ugly it is. And yes, it's scary. It's that thing that prevents you from happiness, and that's the thing that dies. And it feels like you're dying, but you're not actually. So yeah, I get it. Shay continues, it's weird to see that I'm actively conspiring against myself. Yes. It is very strange. Yes. It's very strange. It's unsettling. That's also why there's so much compassion, because sort of, if you understand that, yes, conditioning, sure, it wasn't your fault. All of that is also true. But as you move deeper and you understand that kind of it's in some way by your own volition, you've been living your life like this before waking, then it brings up even stronger compassion to other people that are unknowingly doing the same thing. But it also helps you to understand that if they don't want it themselves, then you're not going to be able to help them. So there are a lot of pushy spiritual teachers out there. It doesn't work, unfortunately, and it's usually a manifestation of their own suffering. But yeah, it's a big paradox. But you're absolutely right. So, and then she says, "I'm not sure where to go from here." Well, there's nowhere to go from here, but to see deeper and deeper about how you have been conspiring against yourself, and how you have been actively disallowing yourself joy, happiness, honesty, truth. Because you see, you can't get rid of a problem before you acknowledge it. You cannot get rid of the ego before you see it. You cannot stop conspiring against yourself before you admit that you are, right? You first have to see the behavior before you can stop it. You cannot stop anything that is still unconscious. So the fact that it is, and I know you, right? So you have been on this path. We've been talking like for some time, right? For a couple of years at least. So the fact that you have gotten to the point where you start seeing how you're actively conspiring against yourself is not a cul-de-sac, right? It's wonderful. It means that you got to the point where you actually start seeing all the maliciousness and tricks of the ego, and you have to see them all before you let them go. So that's wonderful. That's good. That's good. It's not a trap. It is a direct progression. So it is very, very good that you have started to see all the ways in which you have been conspiring against yourself. Because only now, only after you begin to see them, you will slowly start stop these behaviors. You see, and before, you probably weren't ready to see them because it was too painful. It would have been too much. You see, and as you have been learning to love yourself deeper and deeper, now you have approached the point when you're ready to admit that. And it's difficult. It's also difficult to admit, right? So you're doing wonderfully. nowhere to go from it. It's wonderful. Just keep doing whatever it is you're doing. Keep your practice, keep seeing more and more of this, and those behaviors will slowly, effortlessly, automatically fall off the more you are aware of them. It's the awareness that heals. It's the awareness that allows you to change. Always, always, without exception. Okay. Mikamo says, I thought you described ego as resistance to experience or all your trauma. Why do you talk about it like a person? Well, I mean, forgive me my poetic license, but yes, I mean, you can. All of it is true. So, ego is resistance to experience. Ego is resistance to pain. It's all of the trauma, but it's also an artificially created persona, a role. Because you see, kind of initially, what happens is. How do we accumulate all this resistance to experience? How do we accumulate all this trauma? We internalize messages from parents, from culture, from whatever, about kind of how we should be and behave. And as we do that, we get disconnected from ourselves. We get disconnected from love, and we are seeking conditional love, especially from our parents initially. We are seeking conditional love from other people, and all the culture tells us, everybody around us tells us that in order to be loved, you have to be a certain way, right? So we try to craft this persona, this kind of a way to behave, our values, how we should be, that we think will give us the best possibility for acceptance and love. And then we try to behave exactly like that, right? So this sort of person that is artificially created in our mind. But there's another side of that. Another side of that is that when we deviate from this behavior, when we find ourselves lacking compared to our image of how we should be, or when somebody brings our attention that we don't actually match this ideal that we think we do, then we get angry at ourselves, at another person. We get defensive. So that's another part of it. But the first part of it is just about, well, if I am like that, then people will love me, right? So if I'm nice to people, if I'm successful, if I'm kind, whatever, that's of course not authentic kindness, not yet. Like all of this, right? So we create this image, and we identify with it. So it kind of, you can describe it, actually initially it is what you usually call my person, right? So that's why enlightenment is oftentimes described as death. So the ego death is sort of the death of you, because you identify with this person. That's also why there are so many self-realized people who really love the language of I'm nobody, right? So what do you realize? You realize that this person who you thought you were is actually just a collection of ideas, of ways to behave that you think are proper, and you try to maintain against reality's objections oftentimes, and against your self-interest. And so this is who you think you are. So when this thing goes away, when you disidentify with it, it oftentimes feels like death, and people start saying, well, I'm nobody. I'm nobody. I'm not a person. I'm nobody. Right? And from a certain perspective, that's right, because most people, what they think person isn't actually the body. It's the psychic entity in their head which think that it lives, and it doesn't really exist other than just a set of thoughts and judgments. So usually, and some people call it a person, some people call it persona. So the constructed persona, I mean, you can describe it in many, many ways. But what is universally true is that in the dream state, this is our main identity. And then to let go of this identity oftentimes feels like death. So I think initially ego is seen as this identity person and stuff. In my experience, it was much deeper when it is seen that ego is resistance to experience and also all of the trauma, because actually this person, this persona, this kind of set of scripts and roles were created as a way to cope with trauma, in the idea that if you behave this way, then you won't get hurt anymore, right? So so it's all kind of connected, and the view of what ego exactly is, in my experience, changes multiple times as you go deeper and deeper into this journey. So it's in my view, it's absolutely proper and fine to speak of ego as a persona, as a resistance to experience, as the sum total of all your trauma, as the sum total of all your beliefs, as a sum total of all the lies that you've been telling yourself. So there are many, many, many ways. Oh, as an identity too. So whatever you identify with, right? And it goes from a person to consciousness, awareness, nothingness, the void, and it comes back to the body ultimately. So you can speak about ego in many, many ways. And I generally don't aim for any sort of consistency. And I speak about it in the context in which I am spoken to. So if somebody speaks about it to me as conspiring against themselves, right? So then, of course, it sounds like a person. So it's totally fine. There's really no one consistent way to speak about ego. So I think that I hope that this covers it somewhat. Let me know if it doesn't. Well, let me take a look. We can run for another 10 or 15 minutes. Let me take a look at anything else I have. Okay. Can a person live and have an egoless self? Yes. I mean, that's in a way what enlightenment is. So yeah, I mean, the extent to which it is egoless is debatable, right? So, but certainly, from the practical perspective, that's what enlightenment is when you just live as yourself, but you don't have an ego that constantly suffers. It's very ordinary. Okay, what are the questions? Abihai asks the questions. Is it possible, in your experience, to deal with extreme anger without abusing and hurting other people? Can it all be left out unharmfully? It doesn't seem to me so. Not for the mad chicken that I am. It seems unavoidable. Mad people will be mad. I wonder if you agree with me or have any practical tips. I'm already punching and screaming at common household items or plain air items, so I know about that. Yes, that is certainly a very common experience. So if you feel like it helps, let it out. Don't worry. So is it possible? I guess. I mean, the question isn't is it possible, but will you do it, right? So is it possible if you want to isolate yourself and meditate for 3 years in total silence and just scream at household items, you probably will deal with most of your anger. But now from the practical perspective, almost no one does it, and you may still have a huge temptation to pick up the phone and write a text to whomever you think that wronged you. Now I see what you have done to me, blah blah. As I personally have done many times. So until I finally had no taste for it anymore. So that's also why I think spiritual communities are so important, because spiritual communities like my Discord forum create a safe place where you have an outlet for your verbal aggression. You have an outlet for emotional aggression. Other people understand it, and moreover, they can benefit from it because on the other, like on their side, something they, it helped them process something in them, their judgment and lack of acceptance of your pain, of your aggression, which can manifest as their own anger towards you and things like that. So it's a place where people process those feelings, having agreed for them not to spill out into the other world. But even with the help of these places, will it spill out? I mean, probably. It did spill out in my case for sure. I wouldn't be able to say you that no. Of course, it has, and of course. So I'm actually not aware of a single person which went through it and it hasn't. And so, will you make mistakes? Sure. Will you then realize that it was a mistake and you were processing your own pain and probably will have a desire to apologize to this person? Yes, probably that will happen also. It happened to me also. So the important thing is, don't blame yourself for your mistakes. So you will make mistakes. You will take your ignorance and your pain and your own maliciousness for someone else's, for sure. And you will make mistakes. And even if it's true and it was someone else's, you might later realize that it was cruel of you to point them to it so harshly. And you will want to apologize anyway, just for your callous judgment of them. Because if they are malicious, then they are also suffering just like you were. So you will make all of these mistakes, and that is fine. The most important thing is not to blame yourself for it, and to try to the extent possible to keep focus on what it is you're feeling, not how bad the other person is, but what it is you're feeling. So surprisingly, there's a lot of wisdom in the common culture. Like our parents used to say, right? So count to 10, write an angry email, but don't send it. I mean, my parents did have email, but write an angry letter, but don't send it, until you cool down and things like that. Why? Because when you're not in pain, you see things clearer, right? So, but those kind of outbursts, they oftentimes happen, and it's okay for them to happen. I am actually not aware of a single case when they didn't happen. That's a fantasy, that you can go through this process without really, having very difficult times or having some outbursts or tantrums or hurting somebody. That's okay. But so just as you realize that, forgive yourself for it. Ask another person's forgiveness if you want to. If you truly forgive yourself for it, you actually probably will want to. So keep focusing on your own experience. Keep accepting. Remember that it's mostly about accepting your internal experience. It's about accepting how it feels to be you at every given moment. It's not about necessarily accepting all the people in the way that ego paints acceptance, which is being nice and courteous to everybody. That's not necessarily about that. But it's not about spilling your judgments on them either, and giving yourself like a total free reign to do and speak. Like, for as long as you're still hurting inside, you most likely spilling a lot of your hurt onto other people, which is also why we're so miserable. So I can't say that it's wonderful when it happens, but it's also unavoidable oftentimes. So mistakes will be made. Don't worry about it. Focus on your experience. That's as much as I can say about it. I wish that I could say something more sort of encouraging or positive, but it's difficult to see how we were. It always is. And that's kind of the process. For as long as you're going through this process, you constantly reassess and reevaluate how you were. And there oftentimes there's guilt with that, and you realize that you were cruel. There's all sorts of stuff that comes up. So don't worry about it too much. Just keep practicing, and things will become more and more clear. Ty says, same, I want to find a healthy outlet to release my anger. It's one of my more repressed emotions. As a child, I always wanted to be bullied by others my age so that I could get into a fight. Yeah, so I mean, feel free to shout at household items, but yes, if you want to process release your anger, I invite you to my forum. There is a channel, Outlet for Hate, and there's also so in Outlet for Hate you can express your anger at anybody, but it's not actually created for conflict within the community. But there's also channel Ego Fight, which is about verbal fights between members of the community, and you can absolutely pick a fight with anybody, but not physical. So if you really want some physical release, I mean, maybe you can practice some boxing or whatnot. There are always ways to release anger and hatred in a consensual way, even in sex. That's what BDSM is for, basically. It's a way to release a desire to dominate or be dominated in a consensual way. That's why if you practice BDSM correctly, that it's a very intimate practice, and it's based on mutual love and respect. If you don't have mutual love and respect for your partner, like it's not BDSM, it's abuse. So the same thing in personal relationship, right? So in my spiritual community on our platform, we have it is mutually consensual activity, right? So if you release your anger without consent of the other party, then there's oftentimes you will pay for it later with guilt. So consent in mutual respect and understanding of what it is going on, and it would be practice in this case, is very important. So that's why I think such communities are very important. Okay, so Elwood says, you talked about a point where one feels like all the relationships are fake and illusory. Yeah. At what point did that happen to you, and how long did it last? It's been a long time for me. Well, it happened to me pretty much probably immediately after self-realization. So when I realized that I as an ego don't exist, it goes away when you process most of the suppressed, repressed emotionality, because all egoic relationships are based in satisfying mutual emotional needs. That's what they are, right? That's why they fake, actually, because they are based on our mutual need, desire to kind of give and receive compliments, emotional support, being viewed positively, not emotional safety. So they are mostly based on our unsatisfied emotional needs, our unsatisfied yearning for love, which becomes a pervasive yearning for love because it's not authentic love, but it's basically just soothing the ego. So yes, they do feel fake at some time, and as you work through, that's why focusing on emotion is so important. So as you work through more and more of the repressed emotional content in meditation, in dreams, in other forms of practice, as you practice honesty, authenticity, radical honesty, whatever, there are so many different modalities and forms of practice. As people trigger emotions, as you process more and more of the emotion, then this fakeness of the ego will start to slowly dissolve. So So the fakeness of the relationships and the emotional content of them are two sides of the same coin. So so the more you accept and process the emotional content while still remaining truthful and honest and not manipulative to the best of your ability, the more you will kind of slowly dissolve this fake manipulative part of the relationships. Uh, okay. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I was just about to finish, and I think that I came to the end of. Tai says yes, in privy writing room. Okay, wonderful. Yes, good, good. Yeah, feel free to engage with others in ego fight too. Let it rip if you want to. It's totally fine. Totally fine. If you feel that it's productive, just remember to the focus, even as you engage in verbal conflict, the focus is on your own experience. You're doing this to process your feelings of anger, for example, to become more comfortable with them, to become more accepting of them. That's the key of the practice. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Okay, well, thank you very much, guys. It's been an hour and a half. I think it's been quite a successful first meeting. I hope that there will be more to come. I will make another one a week from now. And as usual, feel free to come to my Discord forum. I will post a link here if someone asks. There's a website. I have a Facebook page. So I also have a bunch of other videos on YouTube. So if you enjoy my kind of humble attempts to help my fellow human beings on the spiritual path, then by all means, I am available. Unfortunately, I don't do real life satsangs for now due to the COVID situation, but as soon as it passes, I will resume doing them. So real life is much better than internet. It always has been. So thank you again. Thank you for coming. You will later be able to watch this video and recording on YouTube and Facebook. So don't worry if you missed anything. Thank you once again. Thank you for all of your wonderful questions. It's a shame that we didn't have any live participants. So maybe next time some of you can join the StreamYard using the link, because usually in my experience voice is better than text, video is better than voice, and real life presence is better than video. So please by all means come and join in conversation with me live. So bye guys, until next week. Love you all. Bye. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Bye.